Bienvenue, bonjour tout le monde. Thank you everyone for coming to what is now the 22nd event of the Feminist and Accessible Publishing and Communications Technologies Speaker and Workshop Series. I'm Dr. Alex Ketchum. I'm the organizer of this series, and I'm happy to welcome you to today's amazing event. The Feminist and Accessible Publishing and Communications Technology Speaker and Workshop Series seeks to bring together scholars, creators, and people in industry working at the intersections of digital humanities, computer science, feminist studies, disability studies, communication studies, LGBTQ studies, history, and critical race theory. This series brings forward critical approaches to publishing practices, communication strategies, and techniques for making research dissemination more accessible. One of the motivations for creating this series was that while humanities and social science scholars will critique academic publishing and communication strategies as being sexist, classist, racially biased, and inaccessible, the kinds of solutions oftentimes proffered, such as open access, such as innovative new technologies in a kind of vague, unclear sense, often romanticize and fetishize technological alternatives and do not look at how inequity can be perpetuated or shifted, especially at the level of algorithms, something that I think will be brought up today. As we seek to draw attention to power relations that have been invisibilized, it is important to acknowledge Canada's long colonial history and current political practices. We are currently located on unceded Kanien'kehá:ka territory. Furthermore, the ongoing efforts organized at Unistoten make clear the ever-present and ongoing colonial violence in Canada. Interwoven with this history of colonization is one of enslavement and racism. This university's namesake, James McGill, owned slaves. These histories are here with us in this room and inform the kinds of conversations that we have today. We are also at a critical moment in time when principles of feminism and social justice are vital to having informed discussions around technology, human rights, and justice. However, the kinds of educational programs that do this work are threatened. After a decision made by McGill's Office for the Dean of Arts to suspend the graduate options in gender and women's studies, students, faculty, and allies are organizing to reinstate the graduate option. I strongly encourage you to sign the open letter supporting the program, which is part of 15 master's degree and 11 PhD programs. It is in many ways because of this graduate option in gender and women's studies and the Institute of Gender, Sexuality, and Feminist Studies at large that this speaker and workshop series is able to exist. So I think it's very important that we support it. This series was also made possible from a large variety of funders, including the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada and various funding from organizations at McGill, Concordia, UDM, and UQAM, as well as other partners such as Riquet and Ingredient Montreal's feminist bookstore. Please check out our website both for our list of funders that come from across Montreal and to see a list of upcoming talks. We have 25 in total this year. The next one is with Yuan Stevens on February 26th, talking about Montreal's role in the global AI industry. Then we'll have a pause until March when we're going to start season 2, which is going to focus a bit more on sustainability and right to repair issues, in which we'll have Rakib Tesfaye on March 11th, Gabrielle Coleman on March 18th, and Eleanor Carmi in April. We have videos of past events, such as when Sarah Myers-West of the AI Now Institute came and spoke earlier this fall, as well as speakers such as Mimi Anuaha and more. So please check out our website. The redirect is disruptingdisruptions.com because the other URL is way too long to remember. So I welcome you to check out our website and come to all of our events. They're all free and open to the public to attend. So now for today's event, which I'm really excited for, and I'm glad you are all here to be part of. Meredith Whittaker is a distinguished research scientist at New York University and co-founder of the AI Now Institute. Many of you probably know her for her work at Google as well as part of the walkouts. She has over a decade of experience working in industry, leading product and engineering teams. She co-founded MWAB, a globally distributed network measurement system that provides the world's largest source of open data on internet performance. She has worked extensively on issues of privacy and security, advising on both policy direction and technical implementation. So I hope you will join me in welcoming Meredith Whittaker.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you so much for hosting this, and thank you all for being here. Before I start a bit about what I'm hoping to do here, I have a fairly short talk that's more of a series of provocations. It's fairly wide-ranging, schematic in parts. But I want to leave a lot of room for discussion because this is talking less about a sort of overview of my research or a kind of particular set of findings, and more about a number of options for a broader social project. And I would love to have the room involved in that, so I'll probably break the fourth wall at some point after my talk, and we'll just get into it. I'm also going to be driving the notes from this machine and the slides from this machine, so there may be dissonance. But Alex, thank you so much for making space for this again and for the kind introduction. As Alex said, I am the co-founder of the AI Now Institute at NYU. I worked at Google for a long time. I was part of a lot of labor organizing at Google that sort of had me extruded from the company last year. I'm now full-time at NYU. I love it. And what I'm going to be doing is pretty clear. I'm going to be making the case for why AI needs collective action. And I want to begin with a quick version, real reductive version of the recent history of AI. Before I do, can everyone hear me? I want to be sensitive of accessibility. A quick reductive version of the history of AI, because I'm not clear on the composition of this room, and I know Montreal is a hotbed of AI research and activity, but I don't think there's anyone, however close to these technologies you are, who hasn't kind of asked, like, what is AI and why do we have to suddenly grapple with it, across every realm? And, I was very close to this, and I still sometimes ask myself that question. What are we actually talking about when we talk about AI, this set of technical capabilities that are being breathlessly integrated into core social domains, from healthcare to education to criminal justice to hiring to an entire litany of almost everything we can think of. Now, given that AI has been sold as the hot new thing in tech for the last 5 to 10 years, it may surprise you that many of the AI techniques that are filling the pages of Wired aren't actually new. While we have new versions of the classics, neural nets have existed since the mid-60s. Convolutional neural nets were already being developed in the 80s. LSTM, which is one of the core algorithms used in natural language processing, is now 24 years old. And I could go on. But suffice it to say, these techniques have been around. But they weren't considered particularly useful until very recently. Because to make use of them, or more specifically, to commodify and commercialize them, you need more than an algorithm and a bright idea. You need massive amounts of labeled data and vast computational power. And it's this combination that is fairly recent. In 2012, the world was introduced to AlexNet, which is one of the first demonstrations of AI's commercial potential. Thanks to GPUs, on the one hand, which are a kind of circuit that allows for highly efficient parallel processing of large data sets, and this is necessary to make the machine learning-based AI we're talking about, on the one hand, so GPUs on the one hand, and ImageNet on the other, which is a massive labeled data set out of Princeton and Stanford. ImageNet consists of 15 million images. They're scraped from Flickr and the web without any consent. These images were then labeled by low-paid Amazon Mechanical Turk workers. And as you might be able to read here, some of the labels are odd, some are nonsensical, and some are deeply offensive. Now, the trouble with these labels and what they mean for the way AI is mapping and interpreting and shaping our world is something that my AI Now co-founder, Kate Crawford, has examined at length. And I invite you to check out her work on ImageNet and just how messed up it is. So in any event, it was this novel combination of resources that allowed AI researcher Jeff Hinton and his co-authors to publish their breakthrough AlexNet paper, which helped kickstart the current AI gold rush. AlexNet showed the sudden and startling efficacy of convolutional neural nets in particular, and so-called deep learning in general. But not long before this, the resources that made AlexNet possible weren't available. They weren't even conceivable. And these just happen to be the resources that major tech companies have in abundance and that few others do. You can ask any AI startup and they'll tell you they're almost certainly renting their computational infrastructure from one of the three big tech companies, Amazon, Microsoft, or Google, and are often at a loss for where to get the data they need, very frequently resorting to shady techniques like data brokers or scraping or what have you. So from this perspective, we can understand the popular commodification of internet technologies that began in the mid-90s as creating the conditions for the AI boom of today. Major tech companies happen to have all of the necessary ingredients. They have tons of social data, which is predicated on a vast market reach. alongside powerful infrastructure that was already designed to collect, process, and store such data. This in addition to ready cache, able to compensate rare and highly trained AI talent. And if you've seen what's happened with the exodus of AI professors out of universities, which that struggle has had a lot to do with Montreal in some ways, you can see that you can see how that's worked. So in short, the current crop of AI, the AI that's touching our lives in social institutions, is more or less a corporate technology. And only 5 or so companies, in the West at least, have the resources to develop and deploy such AI at scale, which means we cannot talk about AI without confronting issues of power, and we can't talk about it without specifically confronting structural neoliberal capitalism. So, as these systems are being quietly integrated throughout our core social institutions, we are seeing the cost. And I'm going to turn from that really brief potted history to an examination of some of the places we're already seeing these systems sort of, intrude on our daily lives, so to speak. I'll start with Amazon's Ring, which is a surveillance video camera and doorbell system that's designed so people can have 24/7 footage of their homes and neighborhoods. Just look at your phone, you can see who's outside your house. Amazon is partnering with over 400 police departments in the US to promote Ring. They've asked police to convince residents to buy the system, basically turning cops into door-to-door Amazon salespeople. Amazon gets ongoing access to video footage. Police get access to a portal of Ring videos that they can use whenever they want, effectively creating a privatized surveillance system of homes across the US. Now, Amazon has already filed a patent for facial recognition in this space, and according to internal documents, the company is set to add a neighborhood watch feature that would use facial recognition to automatically alert a Ring user on their phone when an individual that was flagged as suspicious shows up at their door. Now, whether this would be shared with police, whether police would help compile this list of suspects, how this would actually work, none of that has been disclosed, but they can push the feature out if they want. There are no checks on this at this point. Now, turning to Japan, there's a startup called VAC, and it's selling surveillance AI that claims to be able to detect shoplifting before it happens, identifying behaviors such as fidgeting or wearing a hoodie. Department stores, that's funny, but my God. Department stores are already using this service to single out shoppers for scrutiny and harassment based on the AI's model of risk. We have no idea what that model is, right? But I'm sure it's problematic. Now, how someone might contest such a pre-crime assessment and resist unfair profiling is totally unclear. Now, it's important to note that this VAC system is one in a long line of AI systems that are replicating the logics of discredited race science and physiognomy, claiming to be able to automatically detect interior characteristics and personality traits based on people's physical appearance, their speech, and mannerisms. These assumptions rely on stereotypes and folklore. As neuroscientist Lisa Feldman Barrett showed in an extensive survey paper that looked at all available evidence, this type of AI phrenology has no reliable scientific foundation. But as we saw, it's already being used in classrooms and job interviews, and this is often happening without people's knowledge. There's a company called HireVue you may have heard of. They embed such technology in an AI-powered video interviewing system. It uses AI to analyze a job applicant's word choice, their tone, their body language, and based on this to determine whether they'll be a good worker or not. They do this by comparing the mannerisms and movements of applicants to those of other top performers at the firm. Goldman Sachs, Unilever, and many other companies are already using HireVue, even though claims made about their AI have never been openly validated, and even though their top performers should have faced criminal prosecution in some cases. That's Lloyd Blankfein, CEO of Goldman Sachs, testifying before Congress about their role in the disastrous 2008 mortgage crisis, which it was the biggest reduction in black wealth across the US that has happened since Reconstruction. Anyway, another startup called FAMA also focuses on screening for employment. The company offers to determine a risky or good hire, their words, based on a person's social media activity. And you should take some time to just read this because it's really bonkers. As you can see from some of the results, which were posted recently by Twitter user Bruise Almighty, who's also into roller derby, FAMA is clearly way out of its depth. It's applying a very crude, what appears to be sentiment analysis model to the nuanced task of deciding who gets opportunity and who's left out. And crude or not, this is going to affect people's lives. But lest there be any doubt after seeing FAMA, and there's a lot more we could talk about there, these systems frequently get it wrong. In the US state of Michigan, the former Governor Rick Snyder, who's also behind the Flint water crisis, decided to install a statewide automated decision system called MIDAS. It was designed to automatically flag workers suspected of benefits frauds. It was aiming to cut costs, so these often come as, packaged as technical innovations that are actually sort of introducing austerity measures. So it was aiming to cut costs, and to do this, the state fired its entire fraud detection division. So the humans who used to review these no longer had a job, and a machine was doing it instead. But it turns out the MIDAS system was wrong 93% of the time. It falsely accused more than 20,000 residents, and that number is now up to close to 40,000. And it prompted many bankruptcies and even suicides. So as you can see, the stakes are incredibly high. We're already seeing these systems used to justify inequality and to set the boundaries between the haves and the have-nots. Now, I'm sure many of you have heard of China's social credit score. According to the Chinese government, the ultimate goal of this program is to, quote, allow the trustworthy to roam everywhere under heaven while making it hard for the discredited to take a single step. Now, the decision as to whether you're a trustworthy or a discredited person is based on a numerical score. And this score is calculated by a massive AI system fed on data about your social media posts, your friends and family, your finances, where you go, who you see, and much more. What you may not know, however, is that this isn't so unique to China. Earlier last year, the New York State Department of Financial Services announced that life insurance companies can base premiums on what they find in your social media posts. So again, recall FAMA and the methodology there. Then there's a company called PatronScan that sells a system designed to keep records of bad customers to bars and restaurants. So if you're kicked out of a bar for fighting, say, you'll be added to PatronScan's list of troublemakers. And this list will be kept not just by the bar where you fought, but shared with all bars and restaurants who use this system, effectively creating a privatized blacklist. Now, visions for a unified citizen credit score aren't far behind. Leaked internal documents from Google's Sidewalk Toronto project, which you as Canadians may be familiar with, lay out the company's plans for a Google-managed social credit score, which they call a, quote, new currency for community cooperation that would allow Google to, quote, hold people or businesses accountable, end quote, based on massive amounts of personal data collected from every step in interaction with the privatized network sidewalk urban environment. So there you have a handful of examples among thousands. And I hope they serve to paint a fairly different picture of AI than the one that we're used to seeing. I think it's important to emphasize that because this kind of AI is primarily developed by private companies, these socially significant decisions happen in obscurity, behind veils of corporate secrecy. They aren't announced to the world as state policy, in contrast to the Chinese model. Most of what the public does know about AI is written by corporate marketing and PR departments, in which hypothetical benevolent use cases take center stage, from climate forecasting to medical advances, while weapons development, oh my God, I've been pushing the wrong button for like 3 minutes. All right, well, you guys missed all of this. That's New York State. Oh, there's PatronScan. That was a hard one to find. Anyway, okay, I'm back on track. While weapons development, surveillance tech, and contracts with fossil fuel giants proceed without fanfare, they're often hidden from the public and even from workers. And you'll notice that in a lot of these cases, what we do know is thanks to whistleblowers or investigative journalists. We actually don't, even as workers, we actually didn't have access to a lot of this information, and there was a whole network we had to set up to make sure that the people who should be aware of it knew it. So in short, a quick tour of what AI is and whose interest it's serving paints a very different picture than the one we're used to seeing. And this shows that the problems of bias, fairness, and injustice in AI are fundamental issues that won't be fixed by tweaking tech, but require us to examine structures of power and to look at who benefits, who is harmed, and who gets to decide. In offering solutions, there's been a lot of talk of engineering ethics, I'm sure you've heard it, and ensuring that the people building these systems are themselves ethical. This can't hurt, but it's not sufficient. Whatever the intentions of individual engineers within the corporations dominating AI, decisions about how these systems they build will be used are not theirs to make in most cases. They're workers. Executives, sales departments, and customers like the US Department of Defense have much more say over how these technologies are used than do the people developing the models. An example from history can help drive home this point. In the 1800s, Alfred Binet helped develop the Binet-Simon scale, which later became the foundation of IQ testing. His goal was modest and specific. He wanted to better identify children who needed help at school, and through this, to ensure they got it. He stressed the limitations of his assessment methodology, stating explicitly that it was not capable of providing a ranking of intelligence, but was intended to be used narrowly to identify and help those who needed it. However, Binet's benevolent intentions and his ethics didn't stop others from using his invention to support their own agendas. In the US, his methods were integrated into the Stanford Binet IQ test, which worked to score intelligence using a single number. Throughout the 20th century, the Stanford Binet test, whose limitations and biases are well documented, was used to argue that Black people, Indigenous people, women, and other populations facing discrimination were less intelligent than white men, and thus to justify social inequality as the product of biological destiny. In short, the ultimate application of Binet's work was not up to him and was not influenced by his personal ethics. His caveats were quickly left by the wayside. Indeed, it's generally more profitable to shore up the status quo and to serve the interests of those with power and money than it is to dismantle these structures in the name of equity and a livable future. And history shows that those with power rarely relinquish it without pressure. Farhana Yamin is one of the leading legal experts on climate issues and a diplomat who helped negotiate the Paris Agreement. Last year, she glued herself to the steps of Shell Oil's London headquarters as part of an Extinction Rebellion action calling for radical common sense change. She explained what she did this way, quote, "No one is saying stop doing science or stop doing diplomacy, but recognize that those are not going to deliver us unless we fundamentally rewire our economies. So that's why I'm here today. I feel totally comfortable, and I wish I'd done it sooner and had woken up to the power dynamics." This is a lesson many of us are learning, and I hope many more do. What's frightening about AI isn't terminators and super intelligent machines. It's the way AI works to centralize knowledge and power in the hands of those who already have it, from employers to landlords to the police, and further disempower those who don't. To remedy the harms of AI, we need to confront power. And power doesn't move based on force of argument. Throughout history, it's clear that social movements and organized workers in particular have a central role to play in shaping structural change in service of justice. This is why, after years at Google spent researching and writing about tech's social consequences, often calling out problems with the company and its tech, I joined my colleagues and began labor organizing. Dissent without power wasn't working. I was one of the organizers of the Google walkout. I worked to protest Google's AI contracts with the US Department of Defense, their plans to build a central search engine, their inadequate AI ethics policies, et cetera, et cetera. There's a long list. And where little else had, collective action started working. Contracts were canceled, workplace policies were changed, oversight practices were put in place, but there's still much, much more to do. It's time to take advantage of this short window we have before corporate technical infrastructure and AI are so far embedded in our social institutions as to be impossible to pull loose. Given the slow and unsteady pace of regulation and the significant barriers the public faces as we work to know and understand the breadth and reach of these technologies, we need to add organizing and collective action to the front of our AI toolbox. Through this, I believe we can create a kind of immune system, able to check the power of oppressive tech before it's too late, and I can think of no more pressing task. Thank you.